How you gonna walk through this world? It's so easy to misstep. How are you gonna walk through the world? So easy to screw it up. You gotta rise like the sun does every day. Rise up, look above. The light feels something like love. Hello, friends. I'm Shelley Leedahl, a writer in lovely Ladysmith on Vancouver Island, and this is my literary podcast, Something Like Love. The 10 shows in Season 2 will center around random weekly themes, and I'll release a new episode each Wednesday. You're going to hear a Shellified cover song, a selection of prose or poetry, either from my already published books or new work, and a meditation to soothe and inspire as we stumble together through these unprecedented times. Hang in there, folks. We've got this. Well, I dreamed I saw the knights in armor coming, saying something about a queen. There were peasants singing, drummers drumming, and the archer split the tree. There was a fanfare blowing to the sun that was floating on the breeze. Look at Mother Nature on the run in the 1970s. Look at Mother Nature on the run in the 1970s. I was lying in a burned-out basement with a full moon in my eye. I was hoping for a replacement when the sun burst through the sky. There was a band playing in my head, and I felt like getting high. I was thinking about what a friend had said. I was hoping it was a lie. Well, I dreamed I saw the silver spaceship lying in the yellow haze of the sun. There were children crying and colors flying all around the chosen one. All in a dream, all in a dream, the loading had begun. Flying Mother Nature's silver seed to a new home in the sun. Flying Mother Nature's silver seed to a new home. Season 2, Episode 8. Brought to you by the colors gold, silver, and yellow. Gold. Saskatchewan House. An offer is on the table. Rooms where I lived a little, but mostly just learned to be quiet as snow stars on a barley stalk in the field I stared into until blinded, until almost nothing remained. That and the realization of coffee love, the cup's heat a small, still pet within the parentheses of restless hands, so busy at weeds, real and predominantly real. Almost every meal alone at the antique dining table, its milky surface another thing undealt with. Black plates stacked in cupboards, a few old bath towels bought second-hand in the first place. Perhaps the gold-brown carpet can be saved. What does one need, really? Wonder about the rat poison, candy-colored and free from the RM office. I spread it like a condiment inside yogurt lids, placed these sweet lures within crawl spaces. What books remain? The rakes and screws and instruction manuals for appliances, each the wrong color for this century. And the Heinzmann piano, upright beast that knows only carols and Beatles songs in the easy-going key of C. Just February. No 11th-hour rescue of peonies, hostas, or the calla lilies the gardens recently learned to grow. I'll miss how sweet peas glorified the corners. A cargo of grace in the sky that pressed upon the barley field and the pernicious red dog, leashless and racing through soldiers of aspen, slender shadows and human shapes, an eclipse lonely as gallows because it was viewed alone. So much I do not know about U-Hauls. Only an offer, and yet I make much of it, and snow high as knee boots on the shingles. In 18 hours, I'll know more about something, for sure. Blind Mother Nature, silver seed to a new home. Silver. Hospice. Had he grown up in my era, he would have been a tree planter, that lion-haired guy to drag out a battered acoustic, plumb a pick from deep inside his pocket, and sing American Pie, all the verses, near the end of the party, when the last of the drugs were gone. He would have slammed his mouth onto mine without warning, minced my heart out with his smoker's teeth, then licked the ends of each of his fingers, a wildcat who'd verily enjoyed the meal. But the road apparently forked, for he became someone quite different. Now Randolph Silver occupies a warm bed in an open-windowed room at the top of a craftsman his distant nephews will fight over, and I have been hired to sit with him until he dies. Wind rattles the poplars, as if cheerleading my charge toward the finish line, and a week ago a crow touched down on the window ledge, but it was premature. As quickly as it landed, the twig legs pushed off. The bird morphed into an inky smear against the white and watery sky. Randolph's ready to go, but the world's not giving him up just yet. I set my book down and study his hands, soft, spotted toads. He raises one, the right, the other lies helplessly by his side, and I bring cold oolong tea in a tumbler. I hold the glass against his bottom lip, still red as holly berries, and his blue eyes, they've resisted the degradations of age and illness, and would fit into a 4-year-old's face. Send fingers of pleasure across my spine. I wipe his mouth with a linen handkerchief. He's from the time, like my father, when men carried hankies and wore galoshes and pulled the blanket higher up the railway of his chest. I stroke his hand, like a real nurse or matron, automatic with my there, that mocks present and past. If he could speak, he would denounce me, and I would not blame him. 30 years ago, I was a 20-year-old undergrad and often found myself, somewhat mysteriously, in scholarly stratospheres far beyond my intellectual league. I was a good student, yes, but a student just the same. Or perhaps mystery played no part in it. I knew how to make the right noises, as they say, how to query and animate when professors engaged me beside elevators or at faculty club socials arranged for visiting writers and scholars. I knew just enough about migrating songbirds, Zone 3 perennials, the Boer Wars — they loved when I said Voortrekkers — and young to titillate the academy. They approved of my slim-hipped athleticism, swimming, and tennis, and I made sure they knew I was studying French cooking. In my second year, invitations were extended to faculty dinner parties. I could pin my hair up and put on a little black dress, inauspicious cubic zirconas in my earlobes, and assimilate with the best of them. The secret to being a great guest is to say little, lead a lot. Most people only want to talk about themselves. The dean of the English department was precisely what I think of when I hear the word rakish. At 55, Randolph Silver still seemed to be getting used to his long legs and duckish feet, sheathed in calf leather, brown with small black flecking and thick soles underfoot. The shoes gave him an effeminate little bounce, which I believe he quite enjoyed. Randolph's wife was Danish and short. An engineer who designed urban sewage systems, she was reputed to be some kind of genius. There was an intimation that Canada was lucky to have her. Seated, Ilse swung her legs as she spoke. Her miniature feet dangled like a child's. "I am strictly a technical person," she would say, snapping her T's in that endearing Danish way. They did not have children, and I'm not sure they even believed in them. A dinner party in the spring of my final year. My name in black cursive on a white cardboard nameplate next to the dean's. A mistake, I thought. A dozen dinner guests and only 2 invited students. The other, Geoffrey, was a brown-nosing classmate from a hard-right family. He quoted Blake and Keats and had recently taken to wearing spats and bow ties, each oddity rendering him ever more metaphorically kickable. The host was a Shakespeare professor, fond of making her students work in groups, and she was showing off with salmon en croûte. When I reached for the new potatoes, my right thigh ever so slightly bumped against the dean's left, against Randolph. My fingers may have grazed his when I passed the salad, colorful with avocado and blue cheese. He kept turning to me, conspicuously including me as topics of discussion, mayoral candidates, Joni Mitchell albums. The host's new Tibetan terrier blew back and forth across the crystal wine goblets and heirloom silver. Randolph was a Nabokov scholar, oh irony, and flavored his social discourse with Nabokovian trivia, whilst simultaneously, I felt, probing my intellect. Was I aware that Nabokov's process included expanding ideas into paragraphs on hundreds of index cards and shuffling these to determine his novel structure? Yes, I was. Had I any interest in lepidoptery? Not particularly, though as a teen I had been part of a moth club. And which of Nabokov's titles was my favorite? Cigarette smoke and port made an enticing cocktail of his breath. His eyes were an eclipse, dangerous to view directly. Laughter in the Dark, the film novel, I said, to the safe space between his ear and chin. His use of color in that text was extended far beyond cliched symbolism. Randolph might have pressed his leg momentarily to mine. "You know," I continued, voice slow and tempered to register an appropriate mix of internship and acumen, wherein a writer might, for example, use the color black to represent sin, death, or despair, or red to signify passion. In fact, I believe Nabokov spoke of symbolism with vitriol. A distinct pressure against my knee. I caught my breath, and my brain flared with gold sparkles. Suddenly, snow globe. I was turned upside down. The Silvers were flying to New York for an extended Easter vacation. I volunteered to house sit. They insisted on paying me. Palms and philodendrons were watered. The lashing yellow cat fed, and I'd sit in Randolph's bow-windowed office, ringed in floor-to-ceiling books, and vibrate. I slept in his bed, pressing his pillow to my breasts like a head. I pored through old photos. There, the lanky youth in a black t-shirt, cigarette not so much hanging as falling from his lips, hand raised in the stop position. Another photo of him reading on a bed, blurry, black and white, and creased, but still. Shortly after I completed my English degree with great distinction and published a few introspective poems in respected literary journals, I harbored no delusions. Others were much stronger writers. I was offered the position of secretary to the Dean, College of English. Work was, and is, my religion, and my buoyant disposition was, I believe, a breeze that flounced the dust off the aging department. My wage afforded the purchase of my own small bungalow at a time when friends were still living with parents or rooming together in basement suites and sterile new apartments where walls were too thin and one smelled her neighbor's curry or meatloaf in the hallways or heard the headboard rhythmically bang the wall. Randolph was generous. His seasonal gifts included tickets to the Good Theatre in the crime-plagued west side of town. I acquired culture by association. I often attended productions with the Silvers. I'd come to feel a commensurable affinity with them both, though I was aware, and they were not, that I was perhaps too attentive, too ready with the right question, the punctuating pause, or sigh, or 2 fingers on an age-spotted arm. I expect they sincerely believed they knew me. Ah, the ruses, the ruses. One plays so many games in a lifetime. She risks losing track of the rules. The thimble of collegial prestige, the healthy income, the shoulder-rubbing with local and visiting literati, these I could have walked away from. Only Randolph kept me trekking across the University Bridge every morning, weather be damned, toward the pretty buildings on the other side. My alma mater was weft from Greystone, excavated north of campus, and when that inventory ran dry, from Tyndall stone, quarried at Tyndall, Manitoba. Once my darling had said, "Good morning," I could begin to breathe again. That combination of intellect and peculiarity, it quickened my blood. No one can refute that I was always there. I was there when he put his little Ilsa in the ground, when he was forced to deal with budget cuts and department infighting and personal income tax audits. I helped with his Nabokov research. All those years, 5 days a week, the door between our adjoining offices left open, I waited. I hung on the wine of his words, his aggregate wisdom. He never once reached for me. Dementia is ruthless. When he could still walk, he'd grab the backs of the dining room chairs and push them from room to room as if this were his job. He sees what's not there and swats at me sometimes and repeatedly says, "Shut that damn dog up." He does not seem to care for movies, but I pretend he still appreciates documentaries. I scroll through the possibilities and find one about African children making their insufferably long and parched ways through the savanna's snakes and lions to attend a one-room school. I have arranged his pillows, and here we are, watching or not watching, together. My chair's pulled close to his bed, and I am preternaturally aware of his shallow breath, the leaf's width of distance between us. October rain audibly collects in the eaves troughs. A shadow flaps through my peripheral vision. So little time left. I lie on my side beside him, undo the buttons of his striped pajama top, slide it off his thin arms while supporting the adolescent weight of his back. Those determined African children, 3 barefoot siblings with bottled water tied to ropes around their waists, are singing their way through the impossible heat. Randolph's abdomen dips beneath the cage of his ribs. Like a coolie, I say, following the hollow with my fingers, like what the glaciers left behind as surprises. His face is a road map. The hands look every second their age. His feet I know to be tragedies. Ah, but the banquet of his skin. I float my palms across the sculpture he's become, press my nose to his neck, and smell the honey of him. Rain on the window, rain now on his face. I was not careful about what I wished for. The children have made a safe journey and sit with red pencils at old-fashioned desks. I hold my love's head, my hands on either side of his face, tucked wings, and look for reason, but see only the unremarkable passing of my own life and the stony truth. I've never understood anything. Randolph opens his mouth. Spittle has dried white in the corners. He opens and closes, opens and closes. What kind of bird are you? I ask. But of course, no intelligible answer comes. I was hoping it was a lie. Yellow. Ladysmith, Gratitude 3. Everything anyone needs to know about me is spring melt, is moss embellishing stone and the great fallen firs, is sun's velvet glove, equally generous on my face, the thriving salal, rust-red arbutus. All of a morning I've fallen in love with the world again. From Rotary Hill, my little town is a fairy tale told in white squares and schoolyards. Beyond it, the blue-eyed harbor, then Yellow Point Peninsula, undeniably green, and the Salish Sea, where a ferry is doing its important work. When I walk in the rare snow, I know I'm born of prairie, but the Stellar's jays have adopted me. Crocuses so damn earnest I could weep. And when others notice me, the larger animals, those who might walk dogs in the deeper woods, can they know my heart's exploding? I want you here. Leave everything behind. Mountain water in the cups of our palms, and nothing else to need. That wraps up the poetry and prose section of Season 2, Episode 8, Gold, Silver, and Yellow. You heard, first of all, a poem called Saskatchewan House, which has not yet been published in book form. It's from my poetry manuscript called Go. Then you heard a newer short story called Hospice. That was the silver component. And in the yellow category, you heard a poem called Ladysmith, Gratitude 3, which is also from the manuscript Go. For the meditation this week, I got this idea off a television show called Yogi Cameron. Have you seen this program? It's on the Zen TV channel. Yogi Cameron is a British Iranian yoga and Ayurveda therapist and a former high fashion model who now has become this yogi, and he helps people of various ages with their problems through yoga and meditation diet, etc. So I was watching it this week, and he was helping this 10-year-old boy who had been bullied. And he wanted to teach the kid about meditation, but he recognizes that it's pretty hard for an active 10-year-old just to sit and think about nothing. So he suggested a walking meditation, and such a great idea. In any room in your house, take an item, for example, a plant. Put it in the middle of your living room or anywhere where you've got a lot of space. That's going to be your center. And then, as you would ordinarily walk around, say, a labyrinth, you walk mindfully in slow circles around that plant. And the idea is that eventually, when you pay a lot of attention to your feet on the ground, how it feels, your breathing, it will do the same thing as a sitting meditation. So I really like the idea. It's something you might want to try. Anyway, it's been great having you here. Thank you for tuning in. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye now. How are you going to walk through this world? It's so easy to misstep.